Hello and welcome to RareOnAir, the EURORDIS Rare Diseases Europe podcast series. I am your host, Julien Poulain. Today, I'm joined by Małgorzata Kosla, mother of twins Lena and Zuzia. In February 2022, Lena was diagnosed with an ultra-rare neurodevelopmental disorder caused by a PACS2 mutation. Confronted with minimal patient support and almost no research, Małgorzata, who also goes by the name Gosia, and her husband Piotr founded the PACS2 Research Foundation. In just 3 years, Gosia's work through their foundation has helped spark new global research efforts, from drug screening to RNA editing, ASO approaches, and preparations for an international natural history study, bringing together leading teams from Oxford to Boston under a shared mission. Gosia speaks with me about the personal sacrifices behind these efforts, the promise of emerging therapies, and the changes that she believes are needed in Europe to better support families affected by ultra-rare diseases. Join us as she shares her family's story, the realities of patient-led research, and why she continues to be hopeful about the future. Gosia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, could you begin by telling us a bit about yourself and your family, including your 2 children, and what was it like when you learned of the diagnosis of Lena, when you learned of her PACS2 diagnosis? What was that experience like?
So I'm a mother of twins, fraternal twin daughters, and one of them is affected by ultra-rare disease and this developmental and epileptic encephalopathy caused by the mutation in the PACS2 gene. It is ultra-rare. Lena was actually second in Poland, and there was around 40 cases in the world when she was diagnosed back in February 2022. And because my professional background, as well as my husband's professional background, is from pharmaceutical, biotech, FMCG companies, basically from the industry, we knew that nobody will pick up such a rare condition to develop a drug. So we started exploring the options that we have. And thanks to the connection to the other family in US for the, let's say, twin gene, which is called PACS1, as they run PACS1 Research Foundation, they told us, you need to create the foundation and you can run the drug development by yourself. Honestly, it was really overwhelming. Like, you asked me what we felt after diagnosis. We were completely devastated because for first 3 months, Lena seemed to be the healthy child. And it was really sad when she got the epilepsy attack during first Christmas Day.
Oh, wow.
We diagnosed her extremely fast in 6 weeks. But for all these 6 weeks, we really thought that she is healthy. She has kind of epilepsy that will be controllable, because other than that, there were no big signs of something bad happening. But then the diagnosis came, and the PACS2 syndrome includes not only epilepsy, but intellectual disability, behavioral issues. And then when we started exploring what we can do for her, and somebody told us, let's do the foundation and develop a drug, we're like, okay.
Wow.
But we are financiers and marketer. So maybe we are good in running the project, but we know nothing about research, science, clinical research. But we started exploring that. We met a few other patient organizations running research in US. Then we decided, okay, so let's look what is happening in Europe. We couldn't find many organizations which really coordinated global research. So we based our first steps based on the experience of American organizations. And that's how it started. In May 2022, we established PACS2 Research Foundation. There was virtually no scientific coverage on the disease. And today, there is more than 10 projects for the disease, from basic research, translational research, and I think there's around 80 researchers around the globe working for the disease. So after these 3 years, a lot is happening. And one of the big successes is that 4 teams already got public grants for PACS2. So we were able to generate some preliminary data with our investment from the foundation. And some teams secured the grants, unfortunately, mainly on the other side of the ocean, but they're working on it.
Wow. It's an incredible amount to have achieved in such a short space of time. What would your reaction have been if you learned 3 years ago that this much would be happening 3 years on as a result of this foundation?
I would be amazed because having no scientific background, it was like building the plane as we fly. But now there's the discussion how to prepare for the registration of clinical trials or the regulatory issues that can pop up, especially that it is a rare disease and nowhere in the world there's a solution for clinical trials for such a rare disease. So there's challenge every day.
Yeah, but it's very impressive, and congratulations on how far you've come with the work. What would you say were the individually biggest challenges of pursuing this work? Was it, I know you refer to your initial lack of a scientific background, but what would you say were like the bigger challenges or more surprising challenges?
So for sure, we are not working as a normal company because we work for such a rare disease that there won't be ever ROI for that. So the challenge for us was to secure money. And very often we are relying that 70% of our time for all last 3.5 years was invested into crowdfunding, not into coordinating the research. Most of the time it was finding each and every penny. And so we invested some private money, but most of investment was the crowdfunding. And because the grants take time and we don't have this time for our children, and it is not with such a rare disease that you are always successful because there's always somehow requirement for more data. Definitely it is the biggest challenge to run NGO in this area because you need to have tons of motivation. We work fully pro bono. All the money that we gather, we invest in research. For 1.5 years, I resigned from my work to run all those research efforts. And it is also challenging because it is really frustrating, because I believe that still, not only in Europe, patient organizations are not always treated as partners. So when we try to start cooperations, I think that most of the people were very positive. Maybe because we have business background and because we run it as a project, not as a please help our family. But when you look at the public funding, also approaches, how it differs between countries, patient organizations do not have easy access to the funding, especially for research, and are not treated as potential leader of the projects. It was kind of surprising for us as well, coming from the industry, because from our perspective, if you have experienced parent or patient, experience in project management, we may not have scientific knowledge, but if we are a great project manager, we manage that. Of course, we won't do it alone. We need scientific board, but you can be a leader of the research project and it may work, which I believe our example shows, but there are many more other examples. So it was surprising and somehow frustrating that not everyone understand that. The other challenge was actually in Europe, and it was really surprising. What we noticed is that it was much easier for us living in Warsaw, Poland, to connect with people in US and start cooperation, especially at the beginning, than in Europe. In first cooperations we had in US, and we got the replies from people there like in 24 hours. And in Europe, we're fighting to get the answer for months sometimes. So we really didn't have anyone to start with. And first clinicians we met, first scientists we met, they were like, okay, you are crazy. But some of them just joined and they are with us together till today. So yes, and one of our huge successes is that there is now another 8 organizations in Poland which are doing similar efforts for 8 other ultra-rare diseases. So wow. Thanks to our example, our visibility in media, of course, we had to be in media because we were focused on crowdfunding, but also our idea was to inspire the people. Not everyone can run research, of course. Not everyone has capacity, but also appropriate support, because we couldn't do that without family support. Like entire family works on this project, really. So we can do that, me and my husband. If somebody does not have the support, then it is hard. So it is the huge success that we are able to inspire others, and that others are starting the efforts for other rare diseases, because as you perfectly know, there are counted in thousands, and ultra-rare diseases usually has no support unless there's crazy family.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. What would you say in general, and I know it's probably unclear to you yourself, but what would you say is the biggest reason for why patient organizations aren't taken more advantage of in a positive way by researchers and developers?
So one of cultural things that maybe in Europe is that many patients I've met have approached that we should be taken care of.
Right.
So there's not that much entrepreneurial spirit. It's not that there's no, but I think that this government support is much bigger because it is in Europe than in US. And US people just know they are on their own. So they may be this cultural aspect. And because of that, the experience of clinicians, of scientists, when they meet with patients, is not always equal. Many patients are really coming and please help us, please save our child. And in this terrible situation, starting the entrepreneurial project, which is difficult for you, is extremely hard. And not everyone can do that. And especially if you're reading the culture, when usually you get the support from experts, you want this help from experts. You don't want to do things on your own. So I think it may be a cultural aspect, but also I think we are kind of hierarchical in Europe, meaning that professionals, sometimes people with PhD, they just think that they are better than people without PhD.
Right.
And they see patient organizations as an equal partner. And I think it is the huge problem, meaning that it is not true. I strongly believe that including patient organization at each stage of research, even planning the basic research, it is really important because sometimes patient may sit and listen for 6 hours and ask only one question, but it may be the question that really changes something in mind. And it is what researchers tell me. And it is not like after 3.5 years, I'm an expert in biotechnology. Like I still know almost nothing and I'm on the surface. But when everyone is so specialized in their area, they need somebody like coordinator and administrator, and patient organization is perfect for that. And we see, and it is what our researchers tell us, that they feel now that they are not stuck in the lab, but they really feel the reason they work for. Because there's many researchers which worked for 15, 20 years on the disease and they've never seen one patient.
Wow.
And it shouldn't be like that, because how can you be really successful, or how can you find in future somebody for clinical trials if you are not connected? So I really believe that patients should be involved. I know it is hard. It is hard for all the sides. It is hard for scientists, how to talk to patients, how to involve them. And it is hard for patients, how to talk to scientists and how to involve them and speak the same language. But there's many proofs so far that shows that it is beneficial if we try to find the common ground. And that's what we do.
I see. It's really interesting perspective, and you have really informed insights on this. So I'd like to know, actually, so obviously you talked about your journey in progressing research into PACS2 and also just ultra rare diseases. If I may ask, how is Lena's life today? Has she been a beneficiary of this work? What is the state of treatment for her? Is she able to live well?
So she's good. Actually, for the standard phenotype, there's no standard phenotype in rare diseases, but she is, I would say, 5% outlier.
Right.
So she is really good. For example, she is speaking while most of children with this disease are nonverbal. We are laughing that she has superpower because she has twin, and her sister Suzanne is her 24/7 coach. Like she actually is. Like
That's amazing.
We would never force Lena to walk, but she was pushed by Suzanne, who was running around and stealing her toys and so on. So really, she has superpower, but she is good. But nevertheless, we knew it from the beginning. When we were devastated by the diagnosis, that many people told us, you will develop something and your daughter won't benefit because she will be too old. But there will be another PACS2 parent who will log in to Google and we'll look for PACS2 and find something. And not like we put PACS2 and we found literally nothing. And bringing that hope to other people is really something that drives us. And no matter what will be the impact on Lena, because she's good now, still we don't know what is the progression of the disease. Most of the patients are below 14 years old. So we really don't know what will happen in her teenage years, not saying adulthood. So we still work for her, but even if she won't benefit directly, I'm happy to help others. And that's why we also engage in other initiatives for ultra-rare diseases and to support other parents to start similar initiatives.
That's interesting. I think also that matches what motivates so many parents who get involved in rare disease advocacy. They do sadly know that maybe their child might miss a scientific breakthrough that benefits them, but they are very much motivated by improving the experience for other people in their situation in future.
To be honest, we hope that Lena will get something in 1.5 years, so before 6th birthday.
Okay.
But I cannot tell you for sure, because in science you never know. And we are ready for that. I think it is one of the most important truths that you need to accept as a parent leading such an organization if you want to effectively work with scientists. Because it is important to push others so they do their work fast and we don't have unnecessary backlogs. But we need to also understand that some things has to take time also for safety of the patients. Trying to balance that.
But that does bring me to my next question, which is, what provides you with hope based on the scientific advances or increased understanding that you may have seen even over the past 3 years with regards to PACS2? I understand you support research using RNA editing. I'm not sure if you could explain this a bit, but maybe also say if there's, I know you say that you haven't got scientific background, but I imagine you must have familiarized yourself somewhat with these advancing science. Is RNA editing something that provides you with hope, or maybe other areas of science?
So RNA editing is actually something that is more long-term because there is no therapy in clinical trials in this technology yet. It is developed for Oxford University, and the team should publish something next year on that. Okay. So it is really promising because actually this part came earlier than we expected, but it will be kind of proof of concept on cell level still.
I see.
I think it is a long way, but of course RNA editing would be ideal because it removes the reason of the disease. The other RNA therapy that is developed for PACS2 is much more advanced. That kind of silence the wrong gene, because you can have two situations. One is a so-called loss of function. So when you don't have the protein that you need for the right functioning of the organism. And it is easier because then you have gene therapies, gene delivery. It is expensive, but it is also possible, and I know the cases like that, to develop it relatively quickly. Unfortunately, it is not an option for us because we have gain of function. And then it creates a situation when you have kind of toxic protein, which creates the mess. And so we want to silence that. And for that, there's ASO developed by NLRM Foundation in US. And this is the technology that was the first drug for SMA.
Yes.
And ASO is really the technology explored broadly right now since this breakthrough for SMA. And NLRM Foundation is the foundation that is developing it for such a rare disease or even rarer than PACS2. And they already treat around 30 patients in US for 15 diseases, if I'm not mistaken. And they are existing only 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So they do amazing progress. And also they are treating some patients already for 2 years. No really serious adverse events are reported. And there are a lot of promising results. We still don't know what we can expect in neurological diseases, how much of the disease can be reversed, for example. And it is amazing to see that some children in other diseases that stop talking or stop walking, they're starting to do that again after ASO therapy. So that is definitely the breakthrough area we are observing, and it's really promising for PACS2 as well. Because even if we have older children that we would like to support, we can have some hope for them.
Yeah. No, it sounds like a real concrete area of hope, and I hope for such promising advances also. Hopefully the advances can also reach Lena and your family in the coming years. It is, again, going back, it is encouraging what you say. I commonly hear from parents nonetheless that they're often emotionally most invested in the benefits for the wider community and future parents like themselves. So if I may ask you also, I know you've touched on some of your experiences with trying to acquire research funding, and you've elaborated on the importance of patient involvement. I understand that you have taken part in the EURORDIS Open Academy previously, and
Yes.
you also participated in an ERDERA workshop on research funding and patient involvement. How did each of those experiences shape your work and perhaps your foundation's approach?
So I took part in the Open Academy of EURORDIS 1.5 years ago. And it was great experience for me because however, I joined this academy when I already had some knowledge about how to develop research. So for me, from the knowledge perspective, it was more like I got some structure to the knowledge I had. Definitely, I felt the push to develop registry and natural history study. It was underlined and I think underappreciated by us back then. So we started working toward this after the academy, and it's an important step. But it gave me much better overview for the patient organizations in Europe and let me connect with them and appreciate what is happening in Europe. This networking with other organizations is one of the most important values that I got from the Open Academy, because other than that, it is really somehow hard to connect with other organizations. Yeah. And we are part of EPAC at the European Reference Network EpiCare. So we know other most active, let's call it, organizations for epilepsy in Europe, and it is great. But there are 18 of us. I'm sure there are hundreds, but because we are 27 countries, there is some kind of language barrier. For some reason, it is really hard to reach to others. And what is also sad for me and surprising in the rare disease area is that sometimes organizations for the same diseases or same area are competing with each other, which I cannot understand. Right. So it was really great in Open Academy that we could connect in a positive manner, because I think that networking is one of the most important competence in rare disease area. You need that because you cannot do that anything on your own in one country. You really need interdisciplinary international cooperation to treat those diseases and to advocate. So I really appreciate that after Open Academy to have this network expanded with other patient organizations. And I took part in a workshop in October for patient engagement research. It was really inspiring for me to see the different perspective. I think that the people who were invited to the workshop were really well thought through, because all were very open and very honest. Nice. It was really honest conversation. We could disagree, and it was in a really respectful manner, and it was really food for thought for me, like in some areas as well. So I'm definitely, like, everyone was definitely for patient engagement in research, but we differ how to do that and to what extent. And for example, how patient organization can engage in industry. So we differ on that matter, because on some point you want to be independent, on the other you need to have some money to proceed. And if you don't have public money, what is the other option? So we could disagree, and it was good discussion.
That's really interesting. Yeah, sometimes the conversations where you're kind of not having an argument, but you are debating something quite fervently, they do sometimes feel like the most productive conversations you can have. So one thing I'd also wanted to ask you about today is about your Misialek campaign, which I understand has been quite central to a lot of the progress you and your organization have made. Can you explain this campaign a bit, and could you share your journey relating to that and maybe the lessons from that for other families seeking research funding?
So Misialek is Polish phrase, and it means mission cure, simply. Right. And because our crowdfunding efforts were focused, especially at the beginning, in Poland, and it is actually a surprising challenge. Like, everyone has the same problem, that developing a drug and gathering money for research is difficult, no matter where you are based. And it is because it is much easier for people outside of rare disease bubble to support the purchase of the drug that is existing, that's supporting some research that may lead nowhere. Even sometimes in the community of the disease. So in my PACS2 community, we were not able to really gather a lot of money for the research for this disease. So we were focused on our local community. It was not for the purpose, but at some point we decided, okay, we are much more effective in gathering funds in our community in Poland than from other families, actually. So we created Misja Lek, and it is the campaign to show that it is possible, to show what we are doing, to show that we are not a scam. First, but also to explain. So it is kind of connection to educate about rare diseases, that rehabilitation and the developmental support is not the only investment that you can do.
Yeah.
So the goal of Mission Cure was to educate about rare diseases, but also to show what is possible, that because you are a parent without PhD, it doesn't mean you cannot engage.
Interesting. And so I'm sure you're aware that, especially at the EU level lately, there's been lots of policy efforts to promote the number of clinical trials and the amount of research into rare diseases. Europe is very invested right now politically in making European industry more competitive at the global level. And of course, our community, and I'm sure your organization too, believes that rare diseases can actually be a key part of that. What policy changes do you believe would help families facing ultra rare diseases and their advocacy efforts to get more treatments onto the market and accessible for people living with such conditions?
That's a really difficult question, you know. Like there's so many people smarter than myself working on that. And I see two main areas. So for sure, what everyone sees and why a European Union is that focused on changing the policy is because there's a drop in clinical trials share in Europe.
Yeah.
And from the industry's perspective, it is much easier to enter a big market as US or China and do the clinical research there than in Europe. But of course, it is much easier to register the drug if you did clinical trials in Europe. So there's one argument that left. But other than that, it would be so easier if we are somehow coordinated in European Union in this matter. And from patient perspective, I can give you clinical trials and access to markets is one thing. But from patient perspective, for example, there's a TMP regulation for advanced therapies, for gene therapies mainly. For example, if I'm an entrepreneurial family and I involve hospital in Barcelona to develop a gene therapy for my child, I cannot administer that in Poland. I have to go to Spain, to the same country, or best to the same hospital, because that's what ATMP regulations tells. And it is not helping.
Yeah.
Why, if we are still in the European Union, we have some medical standards, clinical standards that I think that are shared across the European Union, we cannot cooperate between hospitals in these two countries to send this drug and to administer that by another hospital. From patient perspective, it is just not understandable.
Yeah.
And there's more cases like that. So another case is access to funding by patient organizations. And I really appreciate their team efforts to harmonize that. But the thing is that public funding agencies do not have same approach. For example, working between countries in few organizations, doing something together, it gets more difficult because we don't have equal access to funds in a way. Then from the industry perspective, entering the market that is more harmonized and you got access to 500 million people, not to 27 countries, it will be one of the main issues to solve.
Absolutely. I think those messages resonate and would meet wide agreement across the community. There is so much potential there for just greater cooperation within Europe. So my final question to you is, what should listeners know about how they can support your work or follow your work?
So you can support our work by following us for sure. So we are on LinkedIn, Facebook, and we have this Misja Lek account in Instagram. And so you can follow us. You can share our story. Of course, if you can support any penny, it is still needed because we are applying for grants, but we are still working as accelerator at some points when there are administrative bottlenecks and those funds are still needed. So, and wish us luck for sure with our future endeavors.
Well, brilliant. I'm sure people will follow your work, and be eager to see its further successes, because it's amazing to see how much you've achieved just over the course of such a short 3-year period, while also, of course, dealing with family life with a rare disease as well. Gosia, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you very much as well.